an image now emblematic of a deadly new normal. Droves of climbers waiting for their chance to summit Mount Everest.
The death toll now rising to 11 people just this year.
Absence of altruism, which is not something you see in climbing, is very present on Mount Everest.
The situation on Everest is gross. It makes me embarrassed to call myself a climber. But this isn't a story about selfishness on the top of the world. This is a story about selflessness on an even more daunting peak. Cerro Torre. Although it barely stands over 10,000 feet, it's battered by constant storms. On the rare occasions when the weather's clear, there are other challenges. The biggest might be the overhanging ice that guards the summit on all sides. This ice is a special variety called rime, which is formed by blowing moist air rather than freezing water. Its consistency can range from solid styrofoam to soupy mashed potatoes. In its loosest forms, ordinary ice tools are useless, and it can be impossible to build solid anchors. Yet despite its meager height, and perhaps because of the other challenges, Cerro Torre attracts a certain breed of climber. I happen to be one of them. Ever since I first glimpsed a photo, I've dreamed of climbing it. The same is true for two of my close friends, Grant Cleves and Chris Cox. None of us were pros, none of us were sponsored, but in December 2018, we set out to test ourselves on what was once thought to be the world's most difficult mountain. What do you think, Grant? We got any chance?
Oh, yeah.
No, that's pretty sweet view. We started our trip by marching straight to Cerro Torre, but we soon learned just how bad the weather can be. Over the next 7 weeks we waited, entertaining ourselves on a few easier peaks. Oh my god, this shot is incredible! Fuck yeah, boys. We got lucky and tagged a few summits. Yeah, Chris! But let me assure you, things hadn't been going that smoothly. Fuck, my back hurts.
It's currently raining.
Please stop raining.
Not really that psyched right now. Oh, fuck.
That's the worst bivvy I've ever had.
Time to go snorkeling. Cumbre Fitzroy, I'm fucking worked.
No, that's about 4 knots. That's nice.
36 hours without sleep. My inner monologue right now is just saying, fuck. Despite my complaining, I'd actually been having the time of my life. That joy disappeared after we returned to town and heard the news that 3 climbers had failed to return from Fitzroy. They had been going up while we were coming down, and were still on the mountain a few hours later when a strong storm rolled in. It was 2 weeks before the storm eventually ceased and their bodies were found. At this point, Grant had already flown home, but Chris and I remained. In the aftermath, we struggled with the thought of how close we'd come to our own deaths. It also brought into sharper focus the limitations of the local rescue services. When the weather's truly bad, help simply can't reach you. With these thoughts on our heads, Chris's wife Jess arrived, followed closely by a big high-pressure system. Jess's presence lightened the mood, and the high pressure brought better weather than we'd yet seen. We started packing for a final try at Cerro Torre. Just getting to the base of Cerro Torre is an ordeal. Nearly the whole 22 miles are off trail, with a few river crossings thrown in for good measure. By the time we got to it, fatigue was setting in. But the weather was perfect, so we pressed on. The route up the west face starts off easy, with a couple thousand feet of moderate snow and ice, comparable to some of the most difficult sections on Mount Everest. As you get higher, however, the angle steadily steepens, until it eventually overhangs. Fortunately, in the 7 weeks since our previous try, the loose rime ice had consolidated, making the climbing substantially easier than it sometimes is. But even in good conditions, climbing 5,000 feet of rock and ice isn't easy. Why are you tired?
I think we've been up for a long time.
Yeah, that'll make the best of us tired, I think. Good job, Jess. Just shy of the summit, we came upon another team of climbers, the first people we'd seen in 3 days. They offered to belay us from above on the notoriously scary final pitch. Before I could say yes, Chris politely declined. He proceeded to lead it casually. Oh my god. Good job. Good job, Chris. This place is incredible. Throughout our ascent, temperatures have been warm, but on the way down, they got downright hot. So we stopped on a ledge for the night to rest and let things refreeze.
Let's get a face shot today, Chris. Morning, sunshine.
Little cramp. Jess is pissed.
But we're still having fun.
That fun stopped when we repelled the low-angle ice below the cold Esperanza. Chris was at the bottom of our ropes, tucked safely under the lip of a crevasse. I was at the anchor, waiting for my turn while Jess completed the slightly traversing rappel. Without warning, the cliff band above us broke apart, and suddenly several tons of rock were thundering towards us. Still clipped into the anchor, I had nowhere to go, so I pressed my face against the ice and prayed as my head and shoulders suffered several painful strikes. The rockfall lasted only a few seconds, but after having glimpsed what was coming toward me, when it finally ended, I was astonished to still be alive. I screamed, "I'm okay! I'm okay!" straight into the ice. Jess had been on rappel 50 feet below me to the right, directly in the path of the largest rock. I was sure she was dead, and too scared to look down for fear of what I would see. So when I heard her yell, "My leg is broken!" I felt relief, rather than worry. She soon unweighted the rope, and I rappelled down to her. After clipping her into my harness, I dragged her across the slope to where Chris was waiting. Her leg was clearly bad. Her foot flopped around uselessly beneath a double fracture near her boot line. The party that had been climbing in front of us witnessed the accident from a few hundred feet below. Despite the risk of more rockfall, they raced up to our position and helped us get Jess back to their camp. The reality of the situation set in. We were below Cerro Torre's harshest terrain, but a couple thousand feet from the safety of the glacier, and in the heat of the day, the mountain was falling down all around us. To make matters worse, we believed Jess's leg was bleeding internally. Park officials soon informed us that outside help was at least a day away and unable to reach us at our current location. We would need to get Jess down ourselves and hope a helicopter could pick her up on the glacier. As the adrenaline wore off, I also discovered that my shoulders were hurt more than I'd realized. I wouldn't be able to help carry Jess, but at least I wouldn't be a burden on Chris or the other team of climbers that eagerly joined the rescue effort. Their first actions were to brace Jess's leg with foam and tape and wrap her inside a nylon tent body. We then tied 4 ropes together and lowered her down a long crevasse slope. Further down, the descent steepens, and Chris saddled her for several exhausting rappels. Jess is trooping it out. I'm so proud of Chris and how well he's taking care of her. And John Griffith is crushing. And they're going to leave some here because we got to get the fuck down, but we're not too far. And I'm doing okay. My shoulders are fucked, but I can at least walk and, contribute in some small way. These guys are incredible. This is going to be alright. I fucking pray. And we'll be down soon. Eventually, a second team of Torre climbers appeared, midway through their own descent. They'd been on the go for over 30 hours, the last several without food, but they immediately offered to help. With their assistance, Jess reached the safety of the glacier just as night fell. After resting a few hours, the rescuers set off again, carrying her several miles out of the confines of the Circle of the Altars to the expanse of the ice cap, where a helicopter might be able to land. There we waited, as storm clouds built in the west, before we heard the salvation of thumping blades.